because of your years working, I think, with various sport managers who've taken environmental issues seriously, or perhaps not seriously, you would probably have, I would assume, some insight into both how these tools can be used and misused.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any concerns about a tool like the one that you've put together, which I think clearly has a lot of benefits to it, but you're probably the best person to speak to the ways that it might be used in ways that weren't intended?
Yeah, I mentioned it's the Wild West out there because there's a few things. So one, there isn't really a standardized way to measure these things. And so typically events can just measure themselves and report out and say, look how great this is. And it's very easy to move the goalposts and decide what you count. So an example is spectator travel is typically considered not owned by the event. Most would sort of report that way. They'd say we're indirectly influencing it. Some would count it. Some might even offset it. But they wouldn't say they own those emissions. But that's still a decision that generally is made by that event. So there's some significant areas where we really need to standardize approach. Something that's really actually positive is the IOC has worked with UN and others to recently develop a brand new carbon footprint set of guidelines for events. So it's the first time that we've actually seen some recommended guidelines that I think that will have to apply to Olympics, but other events can start to use. So that will really help. That's partly why in the name, in all of the initial framing, caveat around what the use of this tool is meant to be and that it's meant to spark a conversation. I've seen so many times event organizers that want to do the right thing and then see the numbers being pretty big in something like travel and go, we don't want to talk about that because that gets at the core, like the DNA of well, we don't want people to stop flying, or we don't want to, mention the bad stuff. Let's just focus on the things we can influence. I mean, that's something else I'd like to chat more about. I think that those that do actually start to make meaningful shifts will be seen well, and that's still a positive story. But those are some of the pros and cons around these tools, yeah.
Great.